Hello, hi, this is Miss Barb, and I want to tell you about my favorite weird animal. It's the opossum. Opossums aren't very pretty, but they are pretty awesome. They're the only marsupial that we have in the United States. We would have to go to Australia to see most of the marsupials in the world, but we're really lucky because we have one right here, the opossum. What's a marsupial? Well, it's a mammal that has a pouch to raise its young in. Its young are born extremely young. In fact, when the opossum babies are born and they crawl from the mother's womb and then through the birth canal up into her pouch, they're only the size of a kidney bean, and they only have two functioning legs. They can't see or hear. And as soon as they get to their mama's pouch, there's like 13 nipples that they might choose from to suck milk from. And so they will find a nipple if they're lucky. Not all of the babies do find a nipple because there may not be enough of them. And then they hang on for 2 months and drink milk until they get strong enough to be able to let go and be a little more independent, but still needing mama a lot. Another cool thing about possums, do you remember when we saw the possum skulls in the classroom? And they were really weird. Can anybody remember one of the strangest things about the possum? How many teeth did they have? Well, anybody remember 50? By far, that's the largest number of teeth of any mammal in Missouri. And those little teeth can really eat lots and lots of different foods. Another cool fact about possums, we've all heard about possums playing dead. That's really kind of an interesting phenomenon. They're not very fast animals, and they mostly just walk to get from place to place. So they can't really run, and they have to have some other trick or device to avoid being eaten by a predator. And they kind of do something that's called playing dead commonly, but it's really not that. It's like their nervous system just collapses and they pass out. Like if you were a human and you were really frightened, you might pass out. And their heart rate slows and their breathing slows, and they drool from the mouth. Pretty convincing. Sometimes they even make this stinky goo come out of their rectal area, their bottom area, and so they smell like they're dead. When the danger's past, then they will get up and move along. That may be within a few minutes, or can even be after a few hours. Opossums are also really the omnivore's omnivore. I mean, they are opportunistic. They can eat all kinds of things, very adaptable. And so they eat a lot of things that they find that are dead. They eat insects. They can eat lizards and various other small things. And they'll eat garbage, human garbage too. So they can use those little teeth to eat almost, well, really everything. And one of the cool things it does is it eats ticks. As it's grooming itself, it will take off the ticks and eat them, and the ticks don't harm them. And they can eat as many as 5,000 ticks in one season. So I think we ought to be very thankful we have opossums, and I think I am. I see too many ticks every year. They're very slow-moving animals. They have poor eyesight, and so the one place you're most likely to see them is along the roadside where they've been run over by a car. How many of you have seen that? Yeah, I thought so. I thought most of you would have. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is its unusual tail. Possums don't have hair on their ears. They don't have hair on their tails. That makes them really susceptible to cold injury during the wintertime. And that tail is also unique in that it's prehensile. You may have heard that word referred to for like monkeys having tails they can hold on to things. They can hang by their tail briefly, which is kind of a weird fact about possums. And they can use their tails to carry things, like to carry leaves if they're going to help make a den a little bit more comfortable, and also to help them with climbing in trees or balance and that sort of thing. But I have a story to tell about a very unusual possum. It's an extremely unusual possum. This possum exists in a book. It's called Opossumundus, and he has a story about how he came to have no hair on his tail. This story, why Opossumundus has no hair on his tail, was written by Colleen Sally, a woman who lived in New Orleans, Louisiana. Have any of you heard of New Orleans? You might look on the map and see where it is. It's really deep in the South. And so this has a Southern twang to the story. And I'm going to tell you about Opossumundus and his mama, and how his mama told him the reason why he has no hair on his tail. Opossumundus was swinging on the porch swing one day when Skunk came pussyfooting by. "Hi, Opossumundus," said Skunk. "Hi, Skunk," said Opossumundus. Skunk and Opossumundus were waving friends, not play-together friends. So they waved, and Skunk pranced on by, swishing her thick black and white tail. Opossumundus kept lollygagging there on the porch, sitting in that swing and thinking and thinking. He was thinking about tails. Skunks have thick black and white tails, he thought. And foxes have red bushy tails. And even hares have fluffy white powder puff tails. But my tail is just pink and naked and funny looking. Perhaps I ought to tell you what a hare is. A hare is a big rabbit type animal, and this one lives down in the South, in this case Louisiana, and they tend to have longer ears and longer back legs than our rabbits. After a while, Opossumundus went in to find his mama. You know, he was his mama's sweet patootie. She loved him so much. He said to his mama, "Why don't I have hair on my tail?" He climbed up onto her lap and she hugged him. "Well, honey," Mama said, "possums haven't always had naked tails. There's an old story. A long time ago, Papa Possum, your great-great-grandpa, had a fluffy little powder puff tail just like hair. All possums did in those days. Now Papa Possum, was a mighty smart fellow. He could fool animals much bigger than he was just by playing dead. And oh, what a storyteller he was. But in spite of his smarts, sometimes he got himself in trouble, and this was one of those times. Papa Possum was sleeping peacefully in his cozy bed one morning when, "What's that sound?" Papa Possum got up. "Who's that? Is that you, Stomach? Growling and groaning and kicking up a ruckus? You are one hungry stomach. What's that you want?" "Persimmons, you say? Well, persimmons you'll get." This story must have happened in the fall, don't you think, students? Because remember the persimmons that we ate last fall? We had persimmon cookies. And we knew at the time that when we ate those persimmons, there were other animals that liked that fruit too. So Papa Possum headed down the road looking for persimmons. And by and by, he ran across his friend Hare. And they started jabbering and confabbing. "What you up to, Hare?" asked Papa Possum. "Nothing now," said Hare. He looked tired. "I've been working hard, planting, watering, harvesting. Wish I'd planted something too," moaned Papa Possum. "Stomach wishes it too. Hear that rumbling? Arr. He's craving persimmons." "Persimmons," Hare said. Sounds good to me too. You know, Bear likes persimmons because they're as sweet as honey. So he planted a whole mess of persimmon trees. Now, Hare wasn't so good at climbing trees, but he sure was good at cooking up plans. He figured he could get himself some persimmons and get Papa Possum to do all the work. "I'm sure Bear would want you to have some, Papa Possum," Hare said. "You can just climb up in the tallest tree and throw those persimmons right down to me. Then you take half and I'll take half. Deal?" Before Hare finished speaking, Papa Possum lit out. Hare followed close behind. Soon Papa Possum was perched in the highest branch of the highest tree, gobbling persimmon after persimmon. "What you say now, Stomach?" Papa Possum cried. Stomach was happy, and Papa Possum was happy too. Between bites, he sang at the top of his voice, "Persimmons, simmons, high up in the tree, plenty enough for Stomach and plenty enough for me." But Hare wasn't happy. "Hey, Papa Possum, throw those persimmons down to me." Papa Possum threw one and gobbled three. And in between gobbling, he kept right on singing, "Persimmons, simmons, high up in the tree, plenty enough for Stomach and plenty enough for me." Hare yelled louder, "Come on, Papa Possum, we made a deal." Papa Possum threw one and gobbled five, then sang a little louder, "Persimmons, simmons, high up in the tree, plenty enough for Stomach and plenty enough for me." Now Hare was mad. "All those persimmons for Papa Possum and hardly any for me? He'll be sorry." And Hare highlighted it down the road. He hightailed it down the road. What do you think? Who do you think he met on that road? That's right, a bear. Bear coming on home. "Hey, Bear," Hare called. "You hear that singing? I think maybe there's someone in your persimmon patch." Then he skedaddled away. Bear stopped, listened, then took off, growling and snarling. Papa Possum was singing so loudly he didn't even hear Bear coming. Bear shook the tallest tree, but Papa Possum just hung on tight and sang out, "3 simmons more, and then I'll go." Bear shook harder, but Papa Possum hung on tighter and sang out, "2 simmons more, and then I'll go." You know, somehow that reminds me of sometimes when we're trying to get persimmons out of a persimmon tree and we're shaking the tree. But he wants that possum too, right? Then Bear gave that tree a ferocious shake, and Papa Possum hung on for dear life. Even then he sang, "Just 1 simmon more, and then I'll go." Bear shook that tree so hard you would have thought the earth was going to fall apart. And finally, down Papa Possum dropped. Down, 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 in a shower of ripe persimmons. Oh, I can almost smell those persimmons now. Well, the instant Papa Possum touched the ground, he got his feet going and bolted for the fence as fast as a racehorse. But you know what? Possums can't really run very fast. And Bear was faster, and he got closer and closer. "Stop, you persimmon-picking possum. I'm going to teach you a thing or two," snarled Bear. Just as Papa Possum slipped through the rails of the fence, Bear chomped his teeth round that little powder puff tail. and he wasn't going to let go. No siree. Bear pulled one way, Papa Possum pulled the other, and that fluffy little powder puff tail stretched. They pulled more, and it stretched more. Why, it was a tail tug of war. At last, Papa Possum was free, so he kept right on going and going all the way home. And Bear, he was back there at the fence with a whole mouthful of hair. Believe it or not, his teeth had stripped that powder puff tail clean and stretched it into the longest, skinniest tail you ever did see. Do you believe it or not? Well, Stomach wasn't quite so fond of persimmons after that, and Papa Possum had lost that fluffy little powder puff tail. Now, you might think that Papa Possum was kind of embarrassed about his tail. It was so pink and naked and funny looking. But he could always make something good out of something bad. It turned out that tail came in pretty handy. Papa Possum found a million different ways to use it. So he was hanging by it, he was writing with it, and he was even holding baby possums with it. And so, said Mama, hugging her baby so close, her Opossumundus, no possum has ever had hair on his tail, including you, my sweet little patootie. The end.